Steven Stamkos is a Nashville Predator, and that's just the beginning of what Barry Trotz did on the first day of free agency.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend just a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I am the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, we are waking up to what feels like a very new and improved Nashville Predators roster after day one of free agency, and one of the biggest names, Steven Stamkos. Friends, he's now a Nashville Predator. We're going to tell you how this came to be, what Nashville had to do to sign the former Tampa Bay Lightning captain. We're also going to take a look around at the other big splashes that Barry Trotz made yesterday as well. Before we dive into all that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, Emma. So we wrapped up our Monday episode saying we really hope the Predators could somehow land Steven Stamkos. And here we are hours later, and Steven freaking Stamkos is a Nashville Predator. Now, he's not the only new addition. Of course, Jonathan Marchessault, new signing. Brady Shea is a Predator now. Scott Wedgwood joins the goaltending core here in Nashville. But we're going to kind of focus this episode on the signing of Steven Stamkos. Huge for the Predators. If you had to describe this Steven Stamkos signing to the Predators in one word or two or three, our show, we make the rules. How would you describe this?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think, you mentioned how we talked about it on Monday, but also I think we obviously the Predators have been rumored to be in the mix for Stamkos, in the mix for Shea, in the mix for Marchessault, among other big name free agents. And I think we were all kind of thinking it would be great if the Predators could get one of those guys. How great would that be? They got all three. And so especially, but again, focusing on Stamkos, I think it's just wild to me. I mean, he has spent his entire 16-year NHL career with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's been their captain. He has won 2 Stanley Cups with them. And he just seems like one of those guys that you would have thought, no matter what, it's like Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh. It's no matter what, when you hear that there's drama or, they're unable to reach a agreement, you think oh, that's just, they're hyping it up for the media. They'll figure it out. They'll get something and he'll stay in Tampa.
Right.
Never would have thought. But, and I think it's especially ironic that Ryan McDonagh went back to Tampa to play with Steven Stamkos. But ironically, because Ryan McDonagh and his $6.75 million salary went back to Tampa, they couldn't afford Stamkos anymore. So
2 ships passing in the night, baby.
He's now with the Predators. And so I just think that it was fantastic work. And, I applaud Barry Trotz for going and getting him. I think Stamkos is one of the extremely few players where you feel like $8 million a year is not an overpay. As a Predators fan, we get, Preds fans get a little twitchy when the salaries start with 8 because those have tended not to work out in recent history. But I think it's a great signing, and it's, very unexpected, but in a good way.
Yeah, I think waking up this morning, I'm with you. Wow, it would be amazing if the Nashville Predators could sign Stamkos or Brady Shea or Marchessault or, did not realize that Barry Trotz is Vivien Ward from Pretty Woman going shopping with the credit card saying, "Oh, you work on commission?" Big mistake, big, huge, and walks out with packages and packages. Like, that's Barry Trotz on the first day of free agency. He went out and I think he knocked everybody's socks off. But I also love what he did. Barry Trotz does not just do something for the sake of doing something. He will do nothing if nothing is the best choice. And so this, I think, is unexpected but delightful. But I'm with you. Steven Stamkos in gold. Not sure I ever thought I would see it.
I never thought I would see him in anything but a Tampa Bay
No.
Lightning jersey. Even I will say that, and we were talking about this before we recorded, the NHL on their Twitter account posted a graphic with all the new signings in Preds gold. It looks weird, but good
Yeah.
weird, it's
I'm here for it.
I'm here for it. I mean, Marchessault maybe looks a little bit less weird because the gold, he kind of played in gold before. It's less jarring to the eye, I
Right.
think. But seeing Steven Stamkos in gold, that's weird. It's weird. But I think it is, it is not, if you think about it, not entirely surprising given that they kind of went through this with him back in 2016 when it was time to extend him, and it was not really smooth sailing there. It was clear they didn't really see eye to eye. That was when they did have a, or an agreement, all right, we'll get this figured out. But then he even mentioned today, we got to hear from Steven Stamkos today for the first time since he joined the Nashville Predators, and he was talking about how it was pretty surprising to him that the Lightning did not approach him last season to discuss a contract extension. And that's pretty telling. I think, what the Lightning had offered him was, I think, 8 years at $3 million a year because they're up against the cap. And look, Steven Stamkos is 34 years old. He's not playing hockey for 8 more years. But they couldn't afford to offer him more annually because of the salary cap. And understandably, he wants his money now, which is, I think he has earned that. I think he, especially with that franchise, but they weren't willing to move heaven and earth like you think they would for a guy like him, and they let him walk. And so he ends up in Nashville where they can get him for a shorter term, but a higher annual value. And I mean, this is a team that he immediately improves this offense, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. He's a power play driver. Tampa had the top power play in the league last year. He's a big part of that. He's coming off an 81-point season. I think last year the Predators only had 3 players who had more than 60 points on the season. So Stamkos is an immediate upgrade, and I think that it's exciting. It's crazy to think, it's still crazy to believe that they even got him, but here he is.
It feels like I'm gonna wake up tomorrow morning and think to myself, wait, is Steven Stamkos really a Nashville Predator? He is really a Nashville Predator. And I will say, throughout the day after the announcement came, you saw 2 very different reactions from these 2 fan bases. And you mentioned, Tampa Bay not getting it done with Steven Stamkos. I think that they're, and I get it. It is a business. I think Steven Stamkos gets that it is a business, but I am shocked that he, the captain, who has always been with this franchise. I think it is a little bit shocking that they didn't find a way with Steven Stamkos, even though it is a business. And I try to think, what would that feel like? And for Nashville Predators fans, maybe a comparison would be like, what if the Nashville Predators were like, hey, Roman Josi, I know you want to retire a Predator, but we're just not going to give you the money to do it. We're going to spend the money on something else. And while you understand maybe the business logistics of Tampa Bay's decision, that fan base, that one's got to hurt. Can you imagine if Roman Josi and this happened to?
I was thinking about that, and what you need to also realize, like Roman Yossi, very similar in the sense that he's a face of the franchise
Yes.
guy, beloved by the fan base, the captain of the team, but also like in addition to all of that, Stamkos has captained that team to 2 Stanley Cups. And it's
Proven
it's crazy
winner.
to me. And you know what? It's one thing if like he was maybe over the hill in his career and he's a guy that maybe had meant a lot to this organization. He's not, producing as much now, but it's kind of a feel good guy
Right.
to have on the team. But no, he's still putting up 80 plus points a season. Like
40 goal season last year.
yeah. And it's just like it makes you think, it makes you kind of wonder. That being said, I give Barry Trotz a lot of credit because he went out and and he talked about this today, that he went out and he had told his amateur scouts at the draft, I want you to take some big swings. And we heard about this, leading up to the draft, like go out, take some big swings. And he said, you know what, if I'm telling my amateur scouts to do that, I need to have, on the pro side, I need to do the same. And he went out and he took some big old swings. But like you said, it was not just like, oh, let me just get every player and then we'll figure it out later. Like, no, it was very calculated. He said that his, biggest areas of need or like his first priorities were shoring up the blue line. So,
Right.
because obviously you lose Ryan McDonough there, that's big. So he goes out, he gets an extension done with Alex Carrier, he signs Brady Shea, he trades for Andrew Gibson, who will be a key piece in a couple years. I think that those are all that addressed that. And then he said, and then we're going to look at the scoring piece, and obviously that's something we need to do. Well, he went out and got Stamkos and Marchessault, and even Brady
Yes.
Shea's got that kind of scoring touch on the back end as well. So I just that and he talked a lot about, and we have talked a lot here on the show about how Barry Trotz, Andrew Brunette, and this Predators organization, they really value culture and what they've built,
Mm,
and this
huge.
this winning culture. And I thought it was interesting today. One thing Barry Trotz said was like, you know, some people understandably might, be a little concerned, like, well, wait a minute. You said we were going to get younger and you went out and signed 3 guys in their 30s. Like, what are we doing? Um, and he acknowledged that. He's like, I realize that, like, on paper I've made this team older. However, um these guys all have that like winning DNA and that just desire and that drive to win, and that alone can keep you competitive for a long time. And these guys are not showing any signs of slowing down even at their quote unquote advanced age. So I think that and I think it works. It really, it just rapidly accelerates this team's window for contention. Um, I don't know if it'll be this year. I think that might be like maybe a little lofty, but I
Little
think
too optimistic, perhaps.
yeah, but they just got a heck of a lot closer.
They did. And I agree with your assessment when we're talking about these quote geriatric hockey players. You look at Ryan O'Reilly, you look at Steven Stamkos, you look at Gustav Nyquist, you look even at Luke Shen. And when these guys are no longer on the payroll, what they do in the locker room over these next few seasons, you are going to see the Luke Evangelistas, the Spencer Stasnys, the Matthew Woods, the Tanner Mollendikes, the Igor Surins. You're going to see them doing what they do because those guys were in the locker room right now. It's an amazing, amazing time for the Nashville Predators. Coming up, well, we're going to talk about just how this Stamkos deal came together. We got some really interesting insight from Stamkos himself. We're going to share his comments with you as well. What did the team do that made him so interested in coming to Nashville? We'll tell you. First, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, we love sports. We love them so much. We just really don't ever want the seasons to end. But as those playoffs wrap up, we know we're going to get fewer and fewer sports. The sports aren't sportsing like we want them to, but friends, FanDuel will let the sports keep going whenever you want them. All you have to do is open their app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Hey, we're talking about these new additions to this Predators roster. You can go check out the odds when it comes to Nashville winning the Central Division next season. Spoiler alert, they got better. But don't take my word for it. Check it out on FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Emma. So we've kind of talked around in a little bit about why it didn't work in Tampa, whether we know there was a financial component of it. We know that, Steven Stamkos said today he felt like maybe when they came to the table, his side was making most of the concessions there. And, look, you all F around in Tampa Bay and let the Nashville Predators find out, because we are the beneficiaries of what couldn't get done there. We did hear from Steven Stamkos today. He did a Zoom media call with us. And so it was really great to hear from him and get his perspective. This is kind of what he had to say to kick off the press conference, talking about what the last, 24 hours before this decision was made were like for he and his family.
Surely it's been a whirlwind of the last few days, lots of emotions, probably into last night. Had a pretty good feeling that we were going to have to make a big decision when we woke up this morning. So probably not the best of sleeps for anyone in the household, but certainly we knew once the sun came up, there was going to be a decision to be made. We knew that there was obviously a lot of teams interested, with Nashville being one of them. And probably around, later in the morning here, we had narrowed it down, and Nashville was the team that we decided to sign with. So it certainly went pretty fast, but like I said, we're so excited to be part of this amazing franchise. Obviously, we saw what happened today with some of the other signings. So a great day to be a Nashville Predators fan. And like I said, very, very excited to be part of that.
It is a great day to be a Nashville Predators fan. I do feel sorry for the Tampa Bay fans, but they're going to, have to process that on their own. But it is a great day to be a Nashville Predators fan. When you look, Emma, at this deal, again, $8 million AAV for 4 years, how do you feel about just the numbers of this?
Honestly, I feel good about it. If you can get like a guy like Stamkos is worth that to me. I mean,
Yes.
I think to anyone. That's not just my opinion. I think that's, what he is worth. And he wants that, again, knowing where he's at in his career, just being older, on the back half of his career at 34 years old. The prospect of an 8-year deal is probably not going to be all that appealing. I think the Lightning wanted to pay him the same kind of money, but on their terms. And
Right.
that would be longer term, less per year. And, because they're too close up against the cap, that's all they were able to offer. And this is where you see, this is why Barry Trotz and David Poile, even before him, had been, shoring up all of this cap space and, being able to weaponize it. It's like, we're going to do something. Like, we're going to do something with this money. You can't take it with you. Right. So I
Right.
think that we saw that, these are the kinds of things that I think Predators fans, at least from what I can tell, have been just begging for years. And it's like, we have this money, let's just go spend it. And he did. And I think, like I said, I think there are very few players out there who are really worth that, especially the free agent market is always wild. Like you see guys getting overpaid all the time just because
Absolutely.
you have to. I mean, it's like you said, it's a business. You got to beat out the competition. And so I think the fact that they were able to get this done, I probably wouldn't have liked it if it was any more than 4 years. I know some people are still going to call $8 million a year an overpay. I don't know that it is for Steven Stamkos.
This is a guy who scored 40 goals last season. $8 million, you better believe I'd pay $8 million, even if you get 35 goals out of him, because what you also get for that $8 million is better players around him. Steven Stamkos is going to make other players better around him. You talked about his work on the power play. How different would some of these games have been last season? How different could the postseason have been if Nashville had been more effective when it comes to the power play? So I think you are getting a lot for those $8 million. And like you said, $8 million is a twitchy number in Nashville. But in 4 years, it feels like a window opens a little bit wider for a sooner for the Predators to be a cup contender sooner, maybe rather than a little bit later that we thought of when this whole reset kicked off. So it changes that.
It does. But at the same time, a lot of times when you see that happen, when you see a team make big moves like this to, like you said, accelerate that process and open that window sooner, usually, or at least a lot of the time, it comes at the expense of the future. Normally it means like, oh, we got to give up these prospects, these draft picks, these whatever, because we're going all in because we want to win right now. And I think this has just been a masterclass by Barry Trotz, because you have and he even touched on this today when we heard from him, that they didn't really have to leverage any of their future to get this done. They didn't give up any of their draft capital. They still have 2 picks in the first round next year, plus what was it, 2 seconds,
2 of the seconds, 2/3,
2/3 of
2/4 and a 7th, maybe.
Yeah,
A slew.
like
Y'all, they have a slew.
they have a whole dang slew, and they did not give up. Like I said, they didn't give up any of that. They didn't really part with any key prospects that they feel are, necessary for the future of this team. You look at guys who I think will be part of the future of this team, guys like Joachim Kemmel and Zach LaRue, all extremely gifted prospects with very high ceilings. But I think, and I understand that people want to see him in Nashville and they're excited and they want him to be here right now. But the fact is, I think these guys, they need a little bit more time. And it's nothing. It's not a fault against them. It's just, that's how this works. Like we can't all be Luke Evangelista and be ready immediately. Like it doesn't always work like that, which is fine. So I think that this, yes, you've just busted open this window right now, but then you still have all the pieces in place to keep that window open for even longer. And whereas, you thought this team was going to be like, best case scenario, like maybe 4 years away from being a contender, maybe, well, they could be a contender now. I mean, if you look at the roster after today, it looks like something you'd build in a NHL video game. Like it doesn't even look real. It's like, how did they do this?
There's no way.
And then you look at all the pieces they have coming and it's like, wow, versus like, and I'm not trying to knock on the Edmonton Oilers, but just kind of by comparison, they don't, like a team like Edmonton, obviously contender. They went to game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. They very literally contended. But then you look down in their farm system, they don't have a lot of like top prospects like coming up through the system right now. Their dev camp, for example, I was talking to some people from Edmonton when I was at the draft. Predators are going to have a very busy, very crowded dev camp this week with all their prospects. The Oilers have 12 prospects, not even enough to, play a game. So they're not even doing like any of the media stuff or anything that we really do at dev camp, because they can't really do a scrimmage. They can't do anything else. And so it's just kind of, well, they're coming for workouts and that's it. And so all of which is to say, I think that this is and I'm not trying to say, oh, the Oilers are in trouble, like, because they're not. But I think
It's
that
it's a different window.
that's usually what you would expect. It's like,
Right.
if your window's open now, you expect that window is going to slam shut like very soon once it's over. And for the Predators, it looks like this is the beginning. It's very clear that Barry Trotz was thinking long term in
Yes.
addition to short term.
Yes. If you are interested in talking more about the Steven Stamkos signing with Emma and I, if you are interested in talking about Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, Scott Wedgwood, anything else that's happened, we want to invite you to join us as a part of the Locked On Predators Insider Program via subtext. In that program, Emma and I are going to share breaking news with you. We're going to provide you with bonus content, in-game immediate analysis, and you're going to be able to chat one-on-one with Emma and I about all things Nashville Predators hockey. It's just another great way to stay connected with the team that you love, a team that has gotten significantly more exciting, I dare say, after the last 24 hours. If you are interested in the Insider Program, you can find out more by checking out the link in our bio or the link in the show's description.
I know I'm biased, but I think we are delightful to speak to. I think we're wonderful.
We're not nothing. If you all saw the texts between Emma and I, you would be all over this like flies on stink.
That's where I was getting at. I was like, we are delightful and we are excellent conversationalists, and we are offering you all the chance to talk to us. And again, I'm biased, but I think we're fantastic to talk to. So I just had to add that in there. Had to hype us up a little bit.
I don't think you're wrong. Like, she's not wrong, y'all. She's not. So yeah, check it out. The link in the bio, the link in our YouTube video as well. And of course, make sure you're subscribing on YouTube. Want to touch back on something that you talked about. You were talking about, what Nashville did to bring in Steven Stamkos. And I thought it was really interesting. He was pretty transparent when asked, like, okay, what did it for you? Because let's be honest, Nashville was certainly not the only team sniffing around Steven Stamkos. This was kind of the big fish of free agency. A lot of teams would want to get him on their roster. A lot of teams were rumored to be in conversation with him, but I thought it was really interesting what he said kind of made a difference for him when he was thinking about the Nashville Predators.
The thing that, I loved and was intrigued with was just from day one was Nashville's interest, and just the it was constant from day one. They had a plan. They wanted to execute a plan. They had obviously made a list of players that they had prioritized, and it feels great when you're one of those players and teams feel that you can be a piece of something special. They've been able to get some really good players to come in and play well and kind of buy into their vision, and I'm certainly excited to be one of those players.
Okay, when he said this in the media availability, in my mind, I was like, Steven Stamkos, have you ever met you? Have you ever seen you play hockey? Of course they were chasing you like you were prom queen. You were prom queen.
I was thinking that. I was like, man, he just like is so human. You know what? It's like we all just want to feel wanted, right?
Yeah.
It's like we just want to feel wanted. But at the same time, again, like to your point, you look at a guy like him, you're like, well, he wouldn't know what that's like because everyone wants him. Like he wouldn't.
Stamkos.
He's the prom queen. And for those of us who have never even been close to prom queen in their lives and sometimes feel very unwanted, you look at a guy like him and you think like, okay, like he could not relate, like he would not understand. And it's wild to think that, but I mean, it does make sense. It's like I said, going back to 2016 and then going back to last year with this team, I have to give Stamkos a lot of credit for knowing. I mean, obviously he has a lot of sentimental attachment to Tampa, and he acknowledged that. And he said that he said, I thought this was very nice, that all of the good and the positive memories outweigh for him any, bad blood or what may have transpired at the end there, which I think is a very healthy perspective, healthy way to look at it. But I also think, I give him credit because he knew his worth, and he wasn't going to get taken advantage of. And it did kind of seem like the Lightning were kind of taking advantage of him or taking him for granted and thinking like, oh, we can get this guy for $3 million a year. Like, he's not going anywhere. And he called their bluff. And, I give him credit for that because he's an 80-point player. Like, he absolutely is worth more than that. So
Yeah.
I think he has a very healthy perspective on it. But it is kind of wild to think like, who wouldn't want you, Steven Stamkos?
But I love that Barry Trotz really had a plan, and the Predators were very persistent in saying, this is how we see this going. This is why we want you. The other thing that I thought was so interesting, and I really chewed on this on the very long drive home, y'all. It was a long drive home from Bridgestone for me. But he mentioned one of the things that he said kind of also got him really thinking about Nashville is he talked about the Predators' point streak last season and saying, you know what, I watched that. Like, I remember, like, okay, I'm noticing this and I'm seeing this is a team that's working hard. This is a team where these pieces and players are coming together. This is a team that is all pulling, like we always heard Andrew Brunette saying, that pulling in the same direction kind of vibe. And Stamkos saw that in the Predators last season, and that weighed in. And I think, you know what, never underestimate the statement your team is making in game 47 of the regular season, because we all think, oh, it's all about the playoffs. And look, it really is. You're going to win the Stanley Cup in the playoffs. Ask Steven Stamkos. He's done it twice, the Nashville Predator. But it matters what your team is doing midway through the regular season. And it mattered to Steven Stamkos. He saw what was happening. So I just think that's a really important takeaway for the Predators from last season, where it wasn't always easy going. But when they found a way, people noticed. And it says something about the franchise, the coaching staff, the locker room. I think that's important.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like the saying, it's about how you are, how you're acting when people aren't watching.
Yes.
And, it's like theoretically, no one really cares in game 47. It's like,
Right.
Whatever, anything could happen at this point. Well, people aren't noticing you. You got to make them notice. And the Predators did that last year. And, he mentioned the top line specifically with Forsberg, right, Nyquist, O'Reilly, and how they were just electric all year. I mean, they statistically were one of the top performing lines in all of hockey last year. And to have a guy like Steven Stamkos recognize that and acknowledge that and be like, I want to be a part of that, I think just speaks volumes about this team.
Yeah. And look, here's what's real. We could talk about Steven Stamkos all day, but there's supposed to be 30-minute episodes. We've already run over, so we're going to have to slowly wrap it up. But this was not the only major signing. Barry Trotz was a very busy guy. On tomorrow's show, we are going to look at two other, what I would consider big pieces. These are pieces that are definitely also going to change what this franchise is capable of. Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea are Nashville Predators. Who would have thought we would be doing this episode? It's so freaking fun, y'all.
Spoiler alert, my one word is also going to be wow for those two. Partly because Barry Trotz was so busy today that he made us all so busy today, and my brain is a little fried. So
wow,
yeah,
works though. It's
wow.
The perfect summary.
Wow.
Perfect summary. Yep. Also tomorrow starts development camp for the Nashville Predators. All of the 8 new prospects that they just picked up in the 2024 draft will be with the Predators. They're going to be at Centennial Sportsplex for some on-ice work. And of course, they're going to do some off-ice work all through the week as well. Emma and I will be there. So we're going to bring you some highlights from that on tomorrow's episode, as well as conversations about, I just never get tired of saying it, new Nashville Predators, Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be a Preds fan, y'all. Gold looks good. Before we sign off, though, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and where they can find your work online.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work online at the Hockey News.
And you can find me online at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at penaltyboxradio.com. Of course, you can follow the podcast on social media at LO_Predators. Make sure you are following us also on YouTube and subscribe. That'll let you know every time we have a new episode dropping. We record Monday through Friday and talk all things Nashville Predators hockey. So we'd love for you to join us there. That is going to do it for this big, exciting, wow episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with another wow episode. We'll see you then.